want is Australia to double its refugee intake. That's the first thing. We take 12,000 a year. We take 150,000 migrants a year. So it would cause us very small trouble to get 20,000 or 25,000 a year. It still wouldn't make a huge difference to the huge, queues in every country where there are refugees. But our people are a rich, generous country, and we could take a lot more refugees. Second thing is, I want to bring the state governments in on refugee settlement. It's only a Commonwealth government issue to a great extent. So there is no Department of Housing. In New Zealand, the government of New Zealand has partnerships with housing with refugees, and so unlike our refugees who move every year and from school to school to school and finding some other place to live once their landlords move them on, refugees are very good tenants actually, but they think they're going to be bad tenants because they're black and Aboriginal people have perception is they trash houses, so Africans will trash houses. Now I'm not saying Aborigines trash it, but that's the perception of owners, and so we have terrible trouble with housing. And so I really would like to see our state government, facing their responsibilities. A 15-year waiting list for government housing is disgraceful. So that's the second thing I'd like to do. And the third thing I'd like to do is to work with adolescents to get them much more, with sort of men-shed support, to get them much more job ready. They can't just go from school to apprenticeship like our kids can because of the culture they've grown up with. Dad saying, take the other end of the single grinder and, hold this jack and da-da-da. They've never had the opportunity to do that. They're useless. A car breaks down, they abandon it. So that's an educational opportunity that we're going to have to take responsibility for, because these kids need it if they're going to be Australians and strong. If I had $5 million, I'd keep it in the bank, and every year I'd have $500,000 interest. And I could buy land on the edges of developments and buy kit houses that are 4-bedroom houses, big enough to have 2 beds in them, not those little tiny bedrooms where you can only slightly fit a bed, like a cupboard, but big enough to have 2 beds because you can have 2 bunks, and that's 4 kids in a bedroom. People go, oh, shock, horror. This is the way people used to live when my grandparents were raising kids. We had 11 kids in the family, right? You had an ordinary house and you put 4 kids in a bedroom. My mother was fine. So if I had that sort of money and that sort of sponsorship, that's what I'd spend it on housing, and have like a community housing where you help build it and you pay it off by paying your rent, if you know what I mean. Like you pay a little bit more rent than you would normally pay, and that way you pay off and you actually have something to work towards of ownership. And also, especially with the Africans, if they had a house that was a government house even, I'm not talking about a house they own, but a house they weren't going to be moved out of, they could get a dog. Africans live for a dog, and none of them have dogs. It's just basic need that normal people have. I've got 3 dogs at my place because we own it. And I love my dogs, and my dogs love me. They're part of my life. Well, you get driven out of a country and you can't have a dog. You can't have your own fruit and vegetable gardens because the landlord says, no, you can't dig up the lawn. That's not home, that's not settlement. So there's a real opportunity for us to do what was done by Australia after the Second World War. When the soldiers came back from the war, we built thousands of houses. Now, government housing is a 15-year waiting list, and it's a national disgrace for all Australians. It's a national disgrace. Housing now is just an investment. You can negative gear it, you can make it a tax write-off, you can make it your superannuation. That's not housing. Housing is a thing that we have as a human right, that you have a roof over your head, you've got a life that you can make with your family, and you can live there for generations. That's what home is. And it's so trite a thing to say, But it seems to be people have lost that understanding. And so we're bringing refugees to Australia who really have that need, and we're ignoring it. We put them in a $550 a week house in Ilibana or somewhere, if we're lucky, for 1 year. And then the owner moves them on because the market's gone up or down and they can sell their house for a profit, you know? It's not home. It's an investment, and we're using people in that sense. Where is the office? There is no office of Australian immigration from Cairo to Sydney. You cannot apply to come to Australia unless you can find an office. Australia could have set up an office in Bombay or in Cambodia. Cambodia even is a signatory to the UN Convention on the Rights of Refugees. We have no offices, so there is nowhere you can go to apply to come to Australia. There is no queue. So either you die in dreadful poverty, or you get in a boat if you've got the spunk and the initiative and the bravery to do it. And I can tell you, I reckon Australia could use a few brave, creative people, and that's who they are. That's my experience of these people. If people say there has to be a queue, create an office where you can go and line up. And there isn't one yet.